Did you know that a lot of the great musicians considered themselves to be slow learners? In this video, you'll discover not only why it's fine if you happen to learn things slowly, but also how that can sometimes actually be an advantage. If you think about yourself as a slow learner, then this can be a really unhelpful limiting belief if you see that as a negative thing. But what does it really mean? It doesn't mean that you can't learn. It just means that you're taking a little bit longer than some other people. So first of all, one thing to say is often that is a misconception. So a lot of people I've had come up to me and say, well, I'm really slow to learn things, slower than everyone else. And actually, when I look at them, I don't think they are. It can just sometimes feel that way to ourselves. From the inside, from our inside, it often feels like we're learning things slower than we are. But even if that is the case, it's not necessarily a bad thing. And in fact, in some ways, as you're about to see, it can be an advantage. So if you do think of yourself as a slow learner, try not to see that as a bad thing. And if you think of yourself as a fast learner, well then maybe you might want to consider slowing down at some point. Now, Bill Evans was one of the great jazz pianists. He played on Miles Davis's classic album, Kind of Blue, which a lot of jazz critics rated as the greatest jazz album of all time. So he's clearly no slouch as a player. And yet he actively considered himself to have been a slow learner when he was starting out. But here's the thing, he didn't see that as a bad thing. In fact, he thought it had given him an advantage. And one of the reasons for this was that he had to struggle right from the start. It didn't come as easy to him to learn things as it did to some of the other musicians. And so in order to make progress, he had to work at it. He had to chip away. He had to find a way to understand what was going on and make it stick. Whereas the other guys, okay, they moved ahead quicker, but they didn't have that struggle. Things were pretty easy. Now, wherever you are as a musician, whoever you are as a musician, if you want to get good, at some point, you are going to hit things that are really hard. It's just the way it is. And what happened at this point was, for Bill Evans, this was nothing new. This is what he'd been dealing with all along, and he knew how to cope with it. He knuckled down, he got to work, he fiddled around, worked out what was going on, he put in the practice time, and he kept moving forward. For the guys who were the fast learners, who'd had it come easy to them the whole time, this was a surprise, this was a block. They just weren't used to breaking through something difficult, and it felt wrong to them because their whole life, their whole career as a musician, things had been easy. So when stuff changed, they thought something was wrong, they thought they just weren't up to it. And so some of them gave up altogether, and others just got stuck. They could never get through that block. So here is a case where actually being forced to struggle with things from the start turned out to be a massive advantage just down the road. And you'll see this the whole time. There are so many stories of child prodigies who are great at music at a really young age, and really very few of them go on to fulfill that potential. And a lot of it is down to the fact that it all comes very easy to them to start with. They get used to it being easy. They never have these strategies, these techniques to deal with stuff when it's hard. And so when they hit that block, that's it, end of the road. They just stop. But there's more to it as well. Another potentially really useful aspect to taking a while to learn something is that often you can go a lot deeper into exactly what's going on, into why it works. If I'm sitting down to learn something and it comes to me really quickly, okay, I can do it, but I've barely scratched the surface. I have not mastered all the detail, all the subtleties, all the things that may cause problems or make things easier later on because I haven't had to explore with it. I've just hit on the right way to do it first time around. It's there, it's not very deep, and okay, I can move on. But there's a lot more that I might have learned if I'd stayed with it longer. If you're someone who learns things relatively slowly, you are automatically spending that amount of more time with them. you are automatically in that situation where you have to experiment, try a few different things, where you sit with something for a few weeks or a few months, and so it starts to become really familiar rather than just surface detail. And so again, it's taken you longer to learn it, but often what's happened is that you've learnt it at a much deeper level than someone who learns things more quickly. And so further down the road, particularly for the fundamentals, it's so important to know the fundamentals. And as I've said many times, the great musicians, it's not usually that they know so many more things than us, it's just they know the fundamentals deeper. So if you are taking your time to learn something, just rejoice in the fact that actually that deeper knowledge of it, that more intimate connection with it, is going to be really, really helpful for you further down the line. Now, I definitely recommend checking out my video on how to stop comparing yourself to other musicians next. And if you'd like the special practice and performance tips that I only share with subscribers, then head on over to playinthezone.com and sign up for the emails. They're free. I've been Mark Morley-Fletcher. Thanks so much for watching. Please click below to subscribe if you haven't done so already. And while you're down there, why not hit share to pass this video on to other musicians? Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.